Hello everyone, it's Teacher Markee once again, and welcome to another video lecture. Today's topic is about the different features and aspects of academic and professional language. At the end of this video, you should be able to differentiate academic writing from professional writing, identify and be familiar with the different features and aspects of academic language. Academic writing and professional writing are extremely different, and you will likely encounter both of these styles at different points in your life. So what exactly sets these two styles apart? You have different goals in academic writing versus professional writing. One of the biggest differences is that academic writing is done mostly to showcase your research and expertise in a specific area or topic of interest, while professional writing is often done to influence or convince someone of something. Usually, you would write a professional document in a business setting to project an idea to colleagues or propose a project. Different people are listening, or the audience. Your audience is typically different in both of these situations. Academic writing is done for academia, like professors, fellow students, researchers, and industry experts such as scientists or historians. Professional writing is targeted to colleagues, business people, managers, and sometimes clients. The tone of voice can change, or the point of view. Professional documents can be written in a different tone than academic works because you have a little more wiggle room to present your ideas. For example, most academic papers are written in third-person narrative, while professional writing can sometimes be written in first person depending on the specific situation or context. The voice. Active and passive voice. So your academic paper will often be written for someone who has more time on their hands to go through and read your arguments. Therefore, your sentences can be longer and use passive voice for these documents. However, for most professional documents, your audience likely has many other reports or papers to read and will skim through for the main points. This means that your sentences should be shorter, more to the point, and in the active voice. Academic writing is a formal style of writing. This means that it is different from other types of writing and different from spoken English. A number of language features and aspects make academic writing appear formal, some of which are formality, complexity, objectivity, impersonality, explicitness, hedging, and your knowledge in constructing structurally correct sentences. First off, we have formality. Formality in writing refers to how well you follow standard English conventions, how often you use slang or idioms, how objective you are about your topic, and how familiar or intimate you assume you are with readers. To achieve formality in academic writing, take note of the following. Avoid colloquial and slang expressions such as wanna, gonna, kinda. For example, instead of writing, the city is gonna experience weather changes in the next few months, you should write, the city is going to experience weather changes in the next few months. Next is limit the use of two-word prepositional verbs, or verb plus preposition, that are commonly used in spoken language. For example, instead of writing, Wancho works for the department that carries out employee engagement initiatives, you should replace the two-word prepositional verb carry out with a single formal word and write, Wancho works for the department that implements employee engagement initiatives. Next is avoid contractions and abbreviations. A contraction is a word made by shortening and combining two words. Words like can't for cannot, Don't for do not, and I've for I have are all contractions. Abbreviation, on the other hand, is a short way of writing a word or a phrase that could also be written out in full. So, for example, you might write Dr. period Jones instead of Dr. Jones. Here, Dr. period is an abbreviation for the word doctor. Let's look at these examples. By Jan period 2023, all citizens are expected to have registered or they'll be excluded from the program. Spell out the abbreviated and contracted words and write, by January 2023, all citizens are expected to have registered or they will be excluded from the program. Lastly, use more formal vocabulary. In academic writing, we can't just use any words we like or we can think of as we do when we speak with someone face to face. Let's look at these examples. The team got a memorandum requiring all members to use the printer that the IT department bought. This sentence is okay. However, it contains some informal words which are highlighted in yellow that may not necessarily be considered academic. So, instead, write, the team received a memorandum requiring all members to utilize the printer that the IT department purchased. The next feature is complexity. Academic writing is more complex. It has longer words with varied vocabulary and usually complicated grammar compared to spoken language. It observes the use of more noun-based phrases and more content or lexical words than function words. It also makes use of more subordinate clauses and complex words and phrases, which is not often observed in oral communication. To achieve complexity in academic writing, take note of the following. First is nominalization. It refers to the process or result of forming a noun or noun phrase from a clause or a verb. For example, in the sentence, this information enables us to formulate precise questions. If we apply nominalization, we have to change the infinitive to formulate into a noun or a noun phrase. Therefore, the new sentence should be, this information enables the formulation of precise questions. Next is transforming phrases introduced by WH words using noun-based phrases. When writing an academic paper, you might want to do away with starting your sentences with the WH words. For example, instead of writing, how much money will be invested should be determined, you should write, the amount of money to be invested should be determined. Next is combining subordinate clauses or simple sentences into one to show complexity. For example, instead of writing, findings also suggest that the positive reactions of the participants to the intervention was associated with the new information. The information acquired was about themselves. You should write, findings also suggest that the positive reactions of the participants to the intervention was associated with the information that they acquired about themselves. And lastly, lexical density. Lexical density refers to the number of lexical words or content words divided by the total number of words. Content words are usually nouns, main verbs, adjectives, and adverbs that contribute to the meaning of the sentence. For example, in the sentence, she told him that she loved him. The lexical density of the above sentence is 2 lexical words, which are told and loved, out of 7 total words, for a lexical density of 28.57%. As for the second sentence, the quick brown fox jumped swiftly over the lazy dog. There are precisely 7 lexical words out of 10 total words. The lexical density of this sentence is therefore 70%. In academic writing, lexical density is important because it can serve as a useful measure of how much information there is in a particular text. Objectivity in writing means that the main emphasis should be on the information that you want to give and the arguments you want to make rather than you, because nobody really wants to know what you think or believe. The convention of objective writing is that arguments use impartial language, which is not personal, judgmental, or emotional. Objective language, therefore, is considered fair and accurate. It avoids exaggeration and bias and shows respect for the views of others. Here are some examples of statements showing objectivity. Instead of writing, "In my opinion, the result has not been presented well," you should write, "The result has not been presented." You should write, "The result has not been presented well." Instead of writing, "As teachers, we need to realize the value of feedback on student writing," you should write, "Teachers need to realize the value of feedback on student writing." Instead of writing, "We should consider the impact of motivation in student achievement," you should write, "Motivation impacts student achievement." Another aspect is impersonality. This means that you have to avoid making statements that are not supported by evidence or examples. This also entails avoiding adjectives or adverbs that tend to exaggerate your description. Here are some examples of statements showing impersonality. In this sentence, the frustrated researchers declined to provide explanations for the failure of the experiment. The adjective frustrated makes the sentence personal. Therefore, we should remove it and write, "The researchers declined to provide explanations for the failure of the experiment." Instead of writing, "The result revealed that the teachers encountered experiences which even made the researcher cry," you should write, "The result revealed that the teachers encountered negative experiences." And instead of writing, "Honestly, the researchers' assistants did a lousy job in gathering data," you should write, "The researchers' assistants failed to observe the guidelines in gathering data." Another aspect is explicitness. It is a feature of writing that shows that the idea or information in the text are connected. Through explicitness, the reader can determine if the idea belongs to the writer or to someone. In order to establish connection, writers use transitional devices. Transitional devices are words or phrases that help carry a thought from one sentence to another, from one idea to another, or from one paragraph to another. There are several types of transitional devices, and each category leads readers to make certain connections or assumptions. Some lead readers forward and imply the building of an idea or thought, while others make readers compare ideas or draw conclusions from the preceding thoughts. Here's a list of some common transitional devices that can be used to cue readers in a given way. To show additional idea, you may use "furthermore," "in addition to," "moreover," "besides," "first," "second," "finally," "not only but also," "following." To show sequence, you may use "first," "second," "finally," "next," "then." To show contrast, you may use "although," "but," "despite," "even though," "however," "in contrast," "in spite of," "instead," "nevertheless," "nonetheless," "on the contrary," "on the other hand." To show cause and effect, you may use as a result, because, consequently, for this reason, hence, if so, then, therefore, thus, accordingly, for this purpose, thereupon, to this end. And to indicate time, you may use until, after a while, at the moment, as long as soon as, at last, immediately, at the time, subsequently, when, in the past, before, earlier, while, in the meantime, lately, later, soon, meanwhile, now, presently, since. And to indicate place, you may use here, there at this point, below, beside, next to, behind, in front, outside, inside. To make a generalization, you may use commonly, generally, in general, for the most part, on the whole, usually, typically. And to introduce an example or illustration, you may use thus, illustrate, for example, for instance, provided that, in particular. To show comparison, you may use and, similarly, likewise, in like manner, in the same way, also, in the same manner. To show assertion or to acknowledge opposition, you may use no doubt, surely, of course, certainly, in fact, without a doubt. And to refer back, you may use as seen in table X, as mentioned, as stated previously. In academic writing, it is prudent to be cautious in one's statements so as to distinguish between facts and claims. This is commonly known as hedging. Hedging is the use of linguistic devices to express hesitation or uncertainty, as well as to demonstrate politeness and indirectness. It is a type of language use which protects your claims. Why do writers use hedging language? Here are some reasons why writers hedge. When there are exceptions to the findings or the results are inconclusive. When they are sure about what they're saying but want to appear more modest or show deference to their readers or colleagues. And when they want to open up possibilities for discussions. Hedging is achieved in many different ways, including the following. For quantifiers, you may use some, a fraction, a minority or majority of, a proportion of, to some extent. For appearance, you may use appears to, has the appearance of, is similar to, shares characteristics with, appears to be in line with. For possibility, you may use might, may, could, can, has the possibility of, has the potential to, is able to. For frequency, you may use sometimes, rarely, tends to, has a tendency to. For context, you may use in the context of, in certain situations. For evidence, you may use based on, as indicated by, according to. For description in language, you may use can be described as, could be considered to be, is sometimes labeled, can be equated to. The term is often used to mean, this may suggest that. Here are some examples of statements showing hedging. In the sentence, children living in poverty do poorly in school. Do all children living in poverty do poorly in school? Definitely not. and no research can collect the data about every child in the world. Also, a socioeconomic situation is only one of the factors that can determine children's performance in school. As we can see, the original argument can be easily refuted, and as a result, readers might question the writer's credibility. To avoid this situation, the sentence could be modified as children living in poverty tend to do poorly in school. Due to adding the verb tend, a writer acknowledges that this is just a tendency and that there are still poor children who are successful in school. Another example is, instead of writing, in both cases, if the policy stipulates the use of either English or Filipino, the faculty, staff, and students will not support it. You should write, in both cases, if the policy stipulates the use of either English or Filipino, this might not gain a strong support from the faculty, staff, and students. And lastly, instead of writing, this writing prompt accounted for the higher scores of students who looked for similar and contrast relationships. You should write, it is possible that this writing prompt accounted for the higher scores of students who looked for similarity and contrast relationships. Sentence correctness is also an aspect of academic and professional language. A sentence should be written with a complete thought or idea so that it is understood by the reader. Common sentence errors can be found in sentence fragments, run-on or fused sentences, comma splice, and choppy sentences. Here are some common sentence errors with examples. First is sentence fragment. A sentence fragment, or a fragment, is a sentence that is missing either its subject or its main verb. For example, people seek counseling when they are experiencing difficulty coping with aspects of their lives. The first sentence is complete and can stand on its own. However, the second one is missing a thought. So, to correct this error, you should write, people seek counseling when they are experiencing difficulty coping with aspects of their lives. Another error is run-on or fused sentence. This refers to a sentence containing two or more clauses not connected by correct conjunction or punctuation. For example, Henry bought the Christmas tree, James put it up and decorated it. This sentence actually has two subordinate clauses that can't stand alone as complete sentences. So, to correct this error, we could use a semicolon or a period. Henry bought the Christmas tree. James put it up and decorated it. Next is comma splice. This error occurs when sentences or independent clauses are improperly connected by a comma alone. For example, Henry bought the Christmas tree. James put it up and decorated it. In this sentence, the two subordinate clauses or complete sentences were separated by a comma instead of a period or a semicolon. To correct this error, you should write, Henry bought the Christmas tree. James put it up and decorated it. And lastly, we have choppy sentences. These are sentences that are too short and often repeat the same words. Your writing will appear unsophisticated and lousy if you write with many choppy sentences. For example, the boy asked his father a question. The boy is 5 years old. The question he asked was about birds. These three simple sentences could be written as one with the same thought or idea. The 5-year-old boy asked his father a question about birds. Academic language has a unique set of rules. It should be explicit, formal and factual, as well as objective and analytical in nature. Students often think that academic language should sound complex and be difficult to write and understand. But that is not necessarily the case. Instead, academic writing should be clear and concise in order to communicate its contents in the best way.